Hello and welcome to the fourth edition of the APAC FinTech Payments Forum. I'm delighted that you all have chosen to join us today. I'm Camilla Bullock. I am the CEO of the Emerging Payments Association Asia. And this is a collaboration with 12 FinTech associations. So I'm going to start to thank the FinTech Australia, FinTech Association of Hong Kong, India FinTech Forum, Indonesia FinTech Association, Elevandi Japan, the FinTech Association of Malaysia, Payments NZ, FinTech Alliance of Philippines, and Singapore FinTech Association, Thai FinTech Organization, and the Vietnam FinTech Club. So thank you all, because we could not do this without you. And this is a very important forum. The Emerging Payments Association Asia is all about improving the payments industry. And this specific activity sits within our cross-border payment stream. We've been looking and working to enhance cross-border payments for several years now, and we have managed to get a seat to represent our region into the G20 project. What enabled us to get that seat, it's just 30 seats in each task force that's working over several years on different verticals of cross-border payments, is that we are representing the broad industry, from small fintechs to big global organizations. But we early on realized we can't do this without the help of you. So thank you for being here. The collaboration with the different fintech association in markets enables us to speak on the behalf of you. And the topic of today, we have collaborated with all the FinTech Association, but it was when we were sitting in a meeting together with the Financial Stability Board representing our region on the global arena that one of our passionate payments friend from America said, there is nothing done in the interoperability of QR codes. There are no QR standards out there. And we said, whoa, that is not right. It's lots of things happening in our region. But we couldn't really say exactly what and compare the different initiatives. And hence, we created this topic of tonight. So what we'll do, we're going to hear from the different FinTech associations. But first, we're going to have a keynote speak. But I'm not going to do all this myself, because today I have the chair of our advisory board with us, May Lam. She's also the CIO of AP+. So with further ado, I'm going to hand it over to May Lam.
Thanks, Camilla. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. So it will be an honor here to moderate this panel. Before we start, I would like to share some facts of the Asia-Pacific region. So APAC is a home to circa 70% of the adult unbanked population in the world. And around 70% of the adult population in Southeast Asia or ASEAN region is either unbanked or underbanked. At least 75 million of micro and SME businesses in the region account for 97% of the business, as well as employing almost 70% of the working population. Payment is the vibrant to the digital economy of this region. The region is witnessing a significant surge on the adoption of digital payments. And the growth of the cross-border trade, especially with the neighbor countries, is fast growing. So the robust payment infrastructure and experience are crucial factor in advancing the APAC digital economy. So all the innovation in payments need to be safe, secured, accessible, affordable, and interoperable. So today, we are going to unpack further on the focus of the QR code payment, which has a market size about US $10 billion in the region, and also the importance and the challenges that we are facing of the interoperability in the whole APAC region. So before we delve into each of the region, let's start with the keynote speaker. So I would like to introduce Sanjeev Chatra. He's a partner and financial services in APAC and payment leader at EY. So over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, May, and thanks, Camilla, also for the kind words. I have this amazing role to try and introduce this topic over 5 minutes, but the great thing is May has already set this scene very nicely with some of the comments that she said. And hence what I thought I'll do, given also that a lot of my colleagues around the region representing different fintech associations are going to be talking about what's happening in their geography, I thought I'll spend a little bit of my time to talk about the why, on why this is such an important topic, why this is increasingly getting center stage visibility, not just from our corporations, but also governments, policymaking, as well as central banks, and why the greater focus on this is driving greater adoption, both for QR codes, but also interoperability. First and foremost, as was noted already, I think Asia is absolutely trailblazing when it comes to adoption of QR codes. And there are a few reasons behind that. First and foremost, I'll say, is the Asia continues to be a very, very enthusiastic adopter of new technology. And I think this is clearly evidenced by some of the facts that may referred, a few others just to build on that. Today, we've got 62% mobile penetration in Asia Pacific. And not just that, the region continues to be a home to many of the pioneer 5G markets, such as Japan, Australia, Singapore, South Korea. And hence, it's very evident that anything pertaining to new technology, Asia will continue to be one of the leading frontrunners to it. The second thing worth calling out is that the demographic dividends for Asia remain extremely attractive. The median age on Asia is about 32 years, which means that there is a greater amount of digital natives. And as is evidence, as we are going to be talking about, with these people that are increasingly spending a lot more time with a younger population of people, which is representing also much more of the working population in the case of Asia region, means that all the ingredients are there to propel this region forward when it comes to particularly adoption of new way of payments as well as new way of banking. A third thing that comes to my mind is that Asia continues to have a high amount of trade reside within Asia. So intra-region trade in the case of Asia accounts for almost 58% of the total trade. Think about all the corridors that exist within ASEAN markets. Think about the trade flows between Australia and other parts of Asia Pacific, or whether it's between Japan and ASEAN, as the case might be. All of these, again, mean that there's a very strong commercial reason because there's a lot more back and forth happening of goods and services across this region, within this region. Building on that is also tourism, which continues to be very, very heavily intra-region. So more than half of the tourism within this region actually resides within this region itself. So intra-region tourism also is contributing. What that means is the need for people to look for convenience when they're traveling overseas. If I'm a native in Singapore and I travel to Malaysia, the need for me to be able to make payment settlements using same payment applications and processes that I'm used to in my home market provides a very high degree of efficiency, convenience, and customer experience that increasingly is being sought after both by the customers as well as being facilitated by a number of the regulators. May made the point about financial inclusion. I think that also is worthwhile calling out because in spite of a lot of the progress that's been made in terms of transformation in the banking industry, there is still a very large amount of population in Asia that still does not have great access to formal financial systems. So looking for technology-enabled solutions that can help provide access either through digital wallets or QR-based payment systems can really help accelerate the adoption as well as access to financial systems. And the last thing I'll say that that is definitely driving this focus around QR codes-based payments is a lot of collaboration between central banks, regulators, and governments. Just over the last few years, there's been a number of new announcements as well as technology advancements and connectivities that have been put in place between different countries. So whether it's Singapore to India or whether it's between different geographies in ASEAN, increasingly there are more and more focus and rails being created. Now, as this happens, it means there needs to be greater amount of interoperability so that people are able to transmit the communication, financial information, as well as payment flows seamlessly across these corridors. One such example that I wanted to spend a minute on before I hand back to Camilla and team is one of the more recent proof of concepts that under the guidance and ownership of MAS, Singapore launched, which is around SGQR+. Many of you would be familiar. Singapore has been one of the pioneers in terms of adoptions of QR code-based payment systems for a number of years now. And as more and more progress has been made, a lot of the merchants today have got a number of different payment applications and front ends, even on QR codes. So hence, MAS kind of had undertaken this proof of concept in the month of November, which, depending on the results, is going to determine the way forward, in partnership with Banking Computer Services in Singapore, Liquid Group, and Nets, which is the underlying acquirer, as well as with support from EY, which is specifically aimed towards improving the inefficiencies between the merchant journey when it comes to payment settlements. Also, to be able to looking at the customer journey, which is quite broken, particularly if you've got a whole host of, in some cases, more than 20 different acquiring platforms and apps that need to be connected back to different systems, as well as considering the challenges a lot of times of tourists as well as SME merchants for settlement of those transactions. So this particular initiative ensures that there's higher payment convenience with a much broader acceptance by using a preferred app that the end consumer may have a reliance on, improves the experience. It ensures also that there's higher transaction volume with an access to a much wider merchant base, and potentially also unlocks new revenue streams for many players, particularly on offers kind of transactions. So I wanted to call that out specifically because I think it's a great exemplar of some of the interoperability that Camilla mentioned earlier. And it's very encouraging to see that Asia is embracing a lot more of inclusive standardization and adoption of these going forward.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Yeah, I will encourage everyone to have a look of these UI reports. There's a lot of insight in it, and there's a lot of learning from Singapore region as well. So the next speaker, I would like to introduce you all to Tukad. Yes. Sorry, to Tukad Srinivasan. So he's the founder and CTIO of Zixu, representing FinTech Australia. Over to you, Karthik.
Thank you, Mai. Thank you, Mala. Hi, everyone. I'm Karthik Srinivasan, and I'm the founder CTIO of Zixu. I'm representing FinTech Australia. A bit of a background on Zixu before I start. So Zixu is a Perth-based FinTech, and our flagship product is Scan and Pay using QR codes as our core business model. And we are connected to the new payments platform, which is a real-time payment systems in Australia. The handful of fintechs probably in Australia servicing the QR code as a payment market. Moving on to Australia as a landscape as compared to the Asian peers. Australia traditionally has been highly dominated by the card market. So we are traditionally a tap and pay. So the adoption of QR code has not been at the pace that it should have been in Australia as compared to the peers in APAC. But it started to sort of surge up after COVID, because that is when the demographics in Australia started to realize what QR codes are, because we've been using it for scanning our COVID tracing apps. So from that perspective, we do have domestic payments schemes here for QR codes. So there are definitely standards available. There was a standard that was released in 2022 by AusPaynet, which is a self-regulatory industry body. This was done late last year. And there is also a QR code standard set for new payments platform, which is the real-time payment systems. Although the templates are different, so we follow the NPPA standards because it's an account. From a standardization of QR codes across Australia, I would say that we still got a long way to go, because we still need the different stakeholders in the industry, the banks, the payment providers, and the fintechs like us, to come together and sort of finalize and give a pathway as to particular QR code that will be sort of used across the country. AusPaynet is dependent on a card sort of rails. NPP is more of an account sort of rails. So very similar to what India does when it comes to the UPI. So you've got the Beam QR, and then you've got the Bharat QR. So two separate rails runs on real-time payment systems as well as card-based. So from a international sort of QR code interoperability perspective, Australia is still in its early sort of embryonic stage of exploring what other countries from a QR code payments perspective from across border we could sort of explore. Currently, the focus now, I think from a country perspective, has been purely domestic. We are yet to see any sort of movement on the international side. That is something that I personally am very keen to look forward to, because we represented Australia as part of G20 in August, and we were part of the working committee of trade that Sanjeev spoke about earlier. And QR codes and payments were very much in our discussions. But that requires not just us, but the larger sort of ecosystem in Australia to sort of come forward and put their heads together and finalize a way forward for all the fintechs, basically not just from a domestic space, but also from an international perspective. So that's pretty much a background on Australia and then where it is at from a QR code payments perspective.
Thanks so much, Karthik. Okay, moving from Australia to Hong Kong. So I'd like to introduce you to Nicholas Su. So Nick is a regional head of payment products, Global Payment Solution Asia in HSBC, and also representing Fintech Association of Hong Kong. Over to you, Nick.
Thanks for having me, May, Camilla. Just checking, audio check, can everyone hear me clearly? Awesome. So, thanks for having me, and really delighted to represent the Fintech Association of Hong Kong in this event. As May mentioned, in my day job, I run Asia payments for HSBC, so work closely with many industry bodies and associations, including today's organizers, EPAA. So it's a small world in payments, as many of you know. Just a quick plug for FTA Hong Kong. So we've been founded for several years now, and I believe we are a great representation of the vibrant Hong Kong fintech and payments community, which includes traditional banks, neobanks, payment techs, gateways, just really to name a few. So on our topic of QR codes in Hong Kong, yes, of course, we have them, and we've actually had what we call the HKQR, the Hong Kong Common QR Code Standard, since I believe the end of 2017. And that's been commercialized in 2018 since the launch of our real-time payment system called the AFPF. It covers multiple use cases, so P2P, pay to merchant, and even B2B in some use cases. So just maybe to make that a bit more real, using myself as an example. So I would sometimes actually make my utility bill payments scanning the FPS QR code, say on my electricity bill. And depending on promotions, I could, let's say, use my PayMe wallet to scan the merchant's QR code. Or if, again, there's a good offer, I could whip out my Alipay app and allow, say, the grocer to scan my Ali QR code as well. So it's quite broad-based usage across both merchant as well as user-presented use cases. And before anyone asks me, no, taxis in Hong Kong still do not primarily accept cashless options, so you do need to bring some notes when you visit this beautiful city. There was a time when I was noticing some WeChat acceptability in some of the Hong Kong taxis, but that has died down now. So maybe let's move on to say international connectivity, and I kind of see this in two ways. The first is, and we're very excited to announce this, that next week Hong Kong and Thailand officially get connected in terms of our FPS faster payments in Hong Kong linking to our sister PromptPay in Thailand. So again, this is nothing new across the ASEAN markets, but it just means that a Hong Kong tourist can scan a PromptPay QR code when they're visiting Thailand, and vice versa for a Thai tourist coming to Hong Kong. I think the other variation is the closed loop wallets, and we call them SVF, stored value facilities in Hong Kong. I think the best example here would probably be the Alipay Plus network, which has multiple markets, primarily and subsidiaries interlinked. So just a few examples, this would be, say, GCash in Philippines, Dana Indonesia, Touch and Go in Malaysia, really just to name a few. And the key concept here is that because they're all part of the Alipay Plus network, you're able to enjoy a pay as a local service, when you're visiting Hong Kong, or similarly Alipay, Hong Kong user could, enjoy that as they travel to some of the other markets as well. So maybe just touching on a similar point that Karthik mentioned in terms of, say, interoperability or efforts to standardize. I mentioned Hong Kong QR code earlier. So that is indeed the defined standard that both our scheme operator, Hong Kong ICL, as well as our Central Bank Hong Kong MA, they've defined that. It's based on AMBCO standards. But I think it's fair to say that that's primarily used only in the FPS QR code example, as opposed to all the other closed loop players that I mentioned. So I think maybe the next logical question then would be, are the regulators looking to kind of harmonize these standards further? There is some nuance here, because I asked 3 different people and I got 3 different answers from the FinTech Hong Kong community members. And I think maybe to me the key question is, what problem are we looking to solve if we further harmonize this standard, right? And the reason why I say that is that when you ask, or maybe say viewing it through the lens of a really important stakeholder, say the merchant in this instance, the majority of Hong Kong QR code standards, be it FPS or be it, say, some of the closed loop players that I mentioned, these are already on the EMVCO standard, right? And on top of that, the schemes as well as some of the acquirers, my understanding is they work together to standardize some of the chip readers and contactless readers, so that from a merchant standpoint, there really isn't too much customization required. So from the past of having, say, and some of you who have visited Hong Kong, you know this, right? They're like 5 to 6 different terminals. Now it's pretty clean. Maybe it's just 1 or 2. So I think in our humble opinion, there isn't too much kind of upside if we kind of standardize the QR payload any further. But who knows, right? Things are always changing in our interesting world of payments. So I'll stop there, May, Camilla, and thanks again, EPA, for having us.
Thanks, Nick. I actually have a lot of questions, but I'll probably save it later. But I think one thing that you brought up is that what problem we're trying to solve. I think that is a key thing, especially coming to the cross-border payment as well. So let's move from Hong Kong to India. So I'd like to introduce you all to Monica D'Souza. So Monica is the APAC colleague at MRC, also representing the India FinTech Forum. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you so much, May, and a pleasure to be here and welcoming everyone who's joined us. So I'm going to keep this short and hopefully excite everyone about the India story. So starting from a little bit of the macro view, India has 1.4 billion citizens and is seeing an enormous growth of 6.1% in GDP. Its current GDP stands at about 3.5 trillion, expected to grow to 5 trillion on the back of a digital economy. And all of this is being driven primarily by payments and the India stack. India's registered 74 billion transactions in real-time payments last year. And right now, this is what we're seeing. So for people who are outside of India, 1 crore is equal to 10 million. Therefore, this is a snapshot of all the users in India. And you would see that for UPI, we currently have 300 million users. In just less than a year, the snapshot has completely changed, with many more millions being actually added. And yes, you heard that right. It's millions that are getting added year on year. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about how the landscape has evolved for UPI in the upcoming few slides. So what is UPI? UPI has been an instant payment system that has been evolved and created by the NPCI in India, and it offers both P2P and P2M payments and instantly allows fund transfers to happen between 2 bank accounts. A UPI ID necessarily needs to be mapped to a bank account, and it is run on top of an open source API, which is built on top of our fast payment system called IMPS. This is our domestic QR scheme. However, there is also what we call the Bharat QR, which is an EMVCO standard that also exists and in fact allows MasterCard, Visa, Amex, and RuPay cards, which RuPay is a domestic local scheme in India, to offer the same kind of QR, except that this is mostly merchant driven, and you can also run and therefore accept UPI payments using Bharat QR. As you can see, it's massive in India in terms of Bharat QR acceptance as well. And this is relevant because MasterCard and Visa cards can actually be used on these QR codes. As always, many of the local banks, including nationalized as well as other banks, are actually leading this race. On the other hand, as far as UPI is concerned, at last length that I heard, we were close to about 60 million unique merchants accepting this code. Now, the only difference between Bharat QR and UPI is that in case of Bharat QR, this is run on an EMV QR standard. Therefore, it requires you, and I'll just go back to requires a merchant ID or a VPA to be set up. On the other hand, a UPI QR can directly be mapped onto your bank account number and a payment address called the VPA to be able to start. Now, in terms of the UPI acceptance and therefore the absolute explosive growth, which has now become a case study all across the world, the UPI's road to 10 billion transactions a month, which happened in August, is actually the culmination of these massive billions that from 0 to 1 and then all the way till 10. But what you would find remarkable is that the journey from 5 billion to 10 billion has been accomplished in a matter of months, billion by billion. So it's been absolutely explosive in terms of the growth, and the directive that the government as well as NPCI has is to grow this to 2 billion transactions a day. I'm going to show you some very quickly skim through some through viral use cases on how UPI QR has become absolutely ubiquitous in India. And as you can see, these are pictures of people who are actually local, who are amazed by where QR is available, including on gods and goddesses in India, as you can see. And anything cash has actually now been replaced by digital, and there are pin dependents and everything else. Now, in terms of the harmonization of QR standards, and I'm going to skip through a few slides, which you can see later, but we are seeing a massive change from debit and credit to UPI, and UPI is going to continue its massive record-breaking growth all the way till 524 trillion INR by 27-28, which is in the next 5 years. Now, I want to actually go to this particular slide. Yes. So in terms of international acceptance, UPI is still in its early stages. There are talks with major countries, including France, UAE, and others for actually accepting UPI in these foreign locations. And UPI is helping set up the system in Nepal and Japan. In terms of the international linkages and bilateral cooperation with other fast payment rails, Singapore has already happened, and there is now talks with Sri Lanka for Lanka Pay QR and UPI QR to be integrated. Last but not the least, there is actually a QR standardization or harmonization regulation that has already been created and passed, whereby India's two existing interoperable QR codes, UPI and Bharat QR, shall continue, and nobody else or no new proprietary codes would be required or be regulated to be established for the Indian payment market. So this would be essential, because earlier we had a lot of fintechs drive QRs by their own. Now there are only two standards that already exist. So there is already harmonization. And with this, I end. Thank you again for being part of the India story.
Thanks so much, Monica. Like the number that you share is astonishing. There's so much learning that I think the other region can take hints, and I think for Australia, selfishly, I just like a pour on the scale of the UPI perspective. Okay, let's move to Indonesia. So I would like to introduce you all to Yogi Hasrudiono. He's the Deputy Head of Payment Systems Department at AFPF, representing Indonesia FinTech Association. Over to you, Yogi.
Thank you, Melam and Camila, and every audience here in this fourth FinTech Payment Forum, Asia Pacific. Very glad to be representing Indonesia here, especially representing the Indonesian FinTech Associations, or what we call AFPF here in Indonesia. So also very glad to see a couple of familiar faces here from colleagues from Australia, Hong Kong, and India sharing their stories. And I think everybody here share the same stories about the optimism of the digital payment system. And across the stories, across the countries that we have been hearing, Hong Kong, Australia, India, it's very clear that the proliferations of the digital payment system is the growth is accelerating. It does not show anything slowing down at all. In fact, from Indonesian point of view, we on an annual basis, our QR transactions on national basis have been growing, doubling at at the least the numbers of the transactions and also the transaction values of the QR transaction also in Indonesia. And I think we also share the same spirits that the bulk of the growth stories of the payment system growth for the past couple of years is because we have the one of the at least Indonesians point of view, we do have the demographic stories on our side. More than 60% of our citizens are on the productive ages. And also more than 60% of Indonesian citizens own more than one mobile phones. At the same time, I think it's almost 70-80% that Indonesian citizens are already an internet users. Out of 270 million Indonesian peoples, meaning more than 170 million Indonesian citizen has an access either to a basic phone or a smartphone on their hand. And those ownership of the device also actually helping the Indonesian to do more mobile transactions that's going to be driving the QR transaction going forward. As the QR transaction in Indonesia itself, in the year 2023 alone, like I have mentioned before, the QR transactions have been growing almost 200% up until this October. So it has been showing the good sign of growth, I think, for the past couple of 5 years. Even though the national Indonesian QR standard just only be enacted when COVID came in 2020, so we can see that it requires only 4 years that Indonesian transaction able to reach more than 1.5 billion of QRIS transactions on annual basis. And those number we are optimistic that's going to be going higher every year going forward. In terms of the nominal transaction itself, the numbers, the value of the growth of the transactions, the value of the transaction itself is growing at the same rate. The number of merchants involved in the QR transactions has been used at least up to 29 million merchants in Indonesia. And the numbers of QR users in Indonesia has been reaching almost, if I'm not mistaken, we reach 45 million QR users in Indonesia. So Indonesia, even though we do have the standard, just had the standard back in 2020, but the usage of QR code has been started at least by 2016. When the regulator came late in 2019, regulator works with the industry, enacting the QR Indonesian standard in 2020. And the evolution of QR itself is no longer only for the payment system. We have been, Bank Indonesia, the regulator of Indonesian payment industry, has been working closely with the Indonesian industry players and also the associations to continuously developing the QR Indonesian standard. Just a couple of months back, Indonesian regulator launches the QR for transfers, QR for withdrawal, and also QR code for topping up. And we also, although predominantly the transaction in Indonesian QR, mostly in domestic transactions, we do actually already involve in QR in cross-border transactions. We already have a joint collaboration and partnership with six ASEAN countries, and we already launched QRIS cross-border between Indonesia and Thailand, Indonesia and Malaysia, and just recently Indonesia and Singapore, I think, launched last week. Going forward, we are very much interested to collaborate more with neighboring countries like Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea, India, Australia, New Zealand, China, and many other countries to promote the usage of QR, not only for domestic, but also for cross-border transactions. Happy to share the stories for Indonesian QRIS code and how it has been developed so far. And I think from this meeting, we can learn a lot from the other countries' experience as well. Thank you, May and Camila.
Thank you so much. Yeah, wish I have more time for more questions, but we'll get to it. So let's move to Japan. So I would like to introduce you all to Takeshi Kito. He's the co-founder and CEO of Avanti Japan. Over to you, Kito-san.
Me? Yeah. So thank you, me and Camila, for having me here today. So I'm really pleased to introduce Japanese situation in QR code payments, the market. So let me briefly introduce the Japanese snapshot. So we have roughly more than 125 population, and as you can see on the left bottom side, bank account penetration rate is over 97%. So basically, in Japan, traditional financial services is well penetrated, and so this is one of the reasons behind this. So in Japan, cash is still king. So cashless transaction or payment ratio in Japan is 36%, and credit card is kind of dominant in this cashless payment, and followed by QR code payment and e-money payment. Yeah, but actually this is not that innovation is lacking, because we have some innovations in the payments area. One is a Felica, and the other was, of course, a QR code. So these two solutions were embedded by the Japanese company. So yeah, we are still facing some difficulties in penetrating cashless solutions, but this is basically based on the business situation or some kind of social difficulties in the market. And as some of you who come to Japan and visited Japanese some retail shops or merchants, you can see this kind of picture. So Japan's payments market is a little bit fragmented. So many payment solutions are still in the market, and it's really diversified market situation. But in 2019, Japanese government and the Cashless Payment Council announced this unified standard for QR code payment, which is called JPQR. So now many QR code payment solution providers join this framework, and you can use this JPQR as a single kind of solution for QR code payment. So when it comes to cross-border payments, we are still in the middle of the way. But recently, Digital Minister of Japan announced that this. So he mentioned that he is very interested in working on the cross-border payments. So left-hand side shows he is trying to implement a cross-border payment system with Indian UPI. This is because he is very keen to implement a cross-border data transfer framework and system. So this is the reason why this cross-border payment is led by this agency. And this policy is called DFFT, Data Free Flow with Trust. So, so again, Japanese cross-border payment is led by this agency. And we are now trying to formalize or initiate a kind of international cross-border payment and data free flow with trust-related council and government collaboration. So yeah, this slide shows this cross-border partnership, which is called Institutional Arrangement for Partnership, so IAP. So this was announced at the G7 summit this year, and this kind of committee will be organized under OECD maybe next year. So Japan is a little bit behind in the cross-border payment and the cashless payment as well. But now we are trying to catching up the situation and trying to have a cross-border framework and policy framework for payment and QR code interoperability. So yeah, this is what's going on in Japan. And lastly, let me introduce our activities and our platforms. We are at the Elevandi, we are organizing a Japan FinTech Festival in March and Global Financial Infrastructure Forum in autumn next year. So we will have more in-depth discussion on cross-border payments and interoperability in the financial infrastructure. So if you want to know more about the Japanese situation and our initiatives, please join us and please come to Japan in March. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing you again in Japan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kido-san. Let's move to, sorry, I think the next one's Malaysia. Yeah, so I would like to introduce you to Helena Ng, Head of Community FinTech Association of Malaysia. Over to you, Helena.
Thank you, May. Thank you for having me today as we gathered here for the first APAC FinTech Payment Forum organized by Camilla and also the team. And as the head of community of the FinTech Association of Malaysia, it is a total honor to be able to join with so many experts here and representatives from each of the regions. And we're actually delved headfirst into the topic that revolutionizing financial landscapes, not just within our region, but as the APAC as a whole. So small introductions of what FinTech Association of Malaysia is. So we're a 6-year-old to 7-year-old organizations, pretty young, but we're definitely the youngest associations that has been approved and endorsed by our Central Bank of Malaysia to help facilitate financial inclusion process in Malaysia. So thank you so much for having us here. And like we have heard like so many sharings from all the experts and representatives from ASEAN and also from Australia and Asia Pacific itself, Malaysia, like the rest of the world, I think we have witnessed a significant shift towards the payments in recent years, especially in digital payments. We're talking about this not just among the younger generations, which is the generations XYZ, but we're also talking about the generations that are a bit more senior. So for example, those who are actually around there 50 to 60s to 70s, it seems like everybody have kind of, I think in the context of Malaysia as well, I think that they have actually acknowledged and accept that this is how the payment world works right now, in which that, you know, when they're doing payments and stuff, they're looking for this small little square thingy. And it's actually fascinating and fun to see the whole population itself and the generation actually move towards this particular advancement. And I really do believe, and we also do believe, all of us here, I guess, we do believe that the rise of fintech innovations has definitely paved a better financial inclusion, improved efficiency, and also enhance a lot of customer experience from Malaysia, as well as all the other friends that are benefits out there, right? So in Malaysia, we do have a robust domestic QR payment scheme that have actually achieved a quite successful milestone. So the name of the payment scheme is called as Duit Now. So I think our friends from Yogi from Indonesia will understand like what Duit is. So just a few concepts. Duit is the Malay word of money. So Duit Now meaning is like money now. The QR code name is actually named as Duit Now. And it was actually an initiative led by PayNet, which is Malaysia's national payments network. Definitely is regulated by our central bank. And the aim is actually to build this particular inclusive and accessible way or payment method, or we could call it like a financial ecosystem itself for Malaysians to be able to move towards a more financial and digital literate system. And Duit Now can currently seamlessly connect participating banks and also e-wallet companies to have them unite under a common QR code where each of them can actually just simplify the payment process and experience for user under one particular QR code. So we have a majority of the banks and also majority of our e-wallet company who is actually adopt to this particular QR code scheme. And some of these, I can actually name some of the banks and company itself. So it includes like Affin Alliance, CIMB, Maybank, Citibank. We also have Touch and Go wallets, Shopee Pay, Grab Pay. There's a lot of e-wallet and e-pay. So this is one of the milestones that we have here right now in Malaysia, and Duit Now has also evolved into include a lot of innovative features where currently user can now receive or transfer their funds with ease only using their phone number, but they have to register the phone number with the bank. So once they establish that relationship, they registered the phone numbers with the bank, then they can actually make transactions straight for through QR, the Duit Now QR code. Yep. And we think that it's a very powerful evolving nature for the digital payments in Malaysia is because major banks and selected non-bank financial service provider who manage 75% of our businesses in the domestic arena has accepted now payments, which means that they will continue to actually support this initiative by waive any transaction fees possible for micro and small businesses who are actually accessing their business through using QR code payments. So other than these particular merchants and parties, PayNet will actually push for this initiative, also allocates resources, or we're actually planning in a way to allocate some of these resources to help to defray this cost that incurred by Accurus to continue to offer full waivers to micros and small businesses. Effectively, do it now QR payments. So this is a huge part of collective efforts as a whole for all involved stakeholders to exemplify the commitment towards creating the standardized or harmonized QR payment ecosystem in Malaysia. So this particular act, we believe that it's not just benefiting the business as a whole, but it is also help consumer as a whole. So when we're talking about consumer and business, we're including both large and small, local and international. Because I guess that our friends from Indonesia has also mentioned, friends from Hong Kong has also mentioned, cross-border QR code is actually very it's a beneficial thing, and a huge thing right now is because the more that we can actually facilitate cross-border QR codes, the more that it will thrive. So I think for this year we have a collaborations, and we have announced it with already the Monetary Authority of Singapore to launch the QR payment linkage between Malaysia and Singapore, where I guess that the name is actually called Straight Now NETS QR code payment linkage. And the same thing goes to Indonesia and also Thailand, where transactions and payments can be done without them have to go through all the traditional ways. So I guess that's okay. I think that's one of the things that we are looking forward to, and definitely something that we should strive as an ASEAN as a region itself, because we're moving. We think it's important for us to move towards the development capitalizing on the expanding networks of not just bilateral countries between countries, but we should actually make it soon to be multilateral payment connections. So this would also help with the tourism side and also do with business and stuff. So more people could benefit from more secure, seamless, and efficient spending experience abroad. Yeah. So last note from us is that we definitely see more of this coming, and the vision is having more and more ASEAN members country comes together to establish more cooperations and consolidate the regional payment, so that we'll be able to foster a more dynamic so-called like ASEAN, and then we'll be able to positioning ourselves as a region to thrive in financial QR code payment. So definitely happy to stand to commit to drive this digital transformation, and happy to connect with anybody who have to want to prove for this particular drives. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Helena. There's a lot of great example of the financial inclusion use cases that have from Malaysia region. Let's go to Philippines. So I would like to introduce you to Litu Nueva. Sorry about that. So Litu is the Executive Vice President and Chief Innovation and Inclusion Officer at RCBC and Chairman at FinTech Alliance Philippines. Over to you.
Thank you, Meilam, and of course, Camilla. And again, it's a pleasure to be among the best of the best fintech associations across the Asia-Pacific region today. This moment right here celebrates not just our services interoperability, but our interconnectedness as a thriving region as well. We are the emerging hotspot of digital adoption in emerging tech. And today we highlight QR codes, the convenient, seamless means for cashless payments and secure transactions. In the Philippines, we have had a domestic QR scheme in tow for a few years now, and it's called QRPH. This is the Philippine Central Bank approved interoperable QR code based on EMV, global standard for secure cashless payments. It gives customers of participating banks and non-bank EMIs a quick and safe method to pay, transfer to and receive funds from other banks and e-money accounts in the country. And this is anchored on the country's national retail payment system. QRPH was launched in 2019 to standardize the use of QR codes in everyday person-to-person or P2P transfers and person-to-merchant or P2M payments. In March this year, the BSP set a strict June 30 deadline for a full nationwide adoption of QRPH codes by banks and EMIs. This is in line with our government's goal of a fully digitalized country. For international usage, it still depends on the participating QR-enabled banking and wallet apps, if they are able to accept international QR codes. For example, leading e-wallet GCash Pay QR outside the Philippines is only available in select countries and for fully verified GCash users. We look forward to more banks adopting international QR payments to different markets. In 2021, the BSP has already signed 2 agreements with the Monetary Authority of Singapore to integrate the Philippines InstaPay and Singapore's PayNow real-time payment networks. This accelerated low-cost cross-border payments, and considering the massive remittance transfers between the Philippines and Singapore, this is indeed a huge step. In November 2022, 5 ASEAN central banks signed an MOU on regional cross-border payments that will include Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, and Singapore. This agreement covers connecting retail payment systems using regional connectivity, which will work using the QR code. As of August this year, the Philippines joined Southeast Asian economies like Vietnam and Brunei in an interconnected cross-border QR code payment system that aims to promote use of local currencies and reduce dependencies on the US dollar. We are working on streamlining and solidifying our QR payment industry in a bid to promote regional interconnectivity for digital economy growth. The use of QR-enabled payments and financial services have been growing increasingly more popular with Filipinos versus whipping out cash, debit, or credit cards for over-the-counter payments. This standardization is a big step in BSP's digital payments transformation roadmap, which has twin goals. First is to convert 50% of the total volume of retail payments from cash to digital by 2023, and second, to increase to 70% the number of Filipino adults with financial accounts. Again, this is another good news for us because we have already surpassed these targets because of the 50% adoption of digital payments in the country before end of this year. The Philippines expects the volume of payments to grow up to about 3.5 to 4.5 billion US dollars this year through the standardized use of QRPH, boosting financial inclusion and massively expanding digital payments to all segments of the population in the country. This growth is about 18.8% increase compared to the previous quarter and 177% in comparison to the same period last year. As regulators, the BSP are working on enabling a standard policy and regulatory framework that will allow industry collaboration and partnerships to flourish while ensuring that risks are effectively managed. This takes into account the safety and integrity of the whole financial system as new technologies continue to be introduced. We have been taking full advantage of the rise of the QR payments. And of course, our ultimate goal is for no one to be left behind, as local market transactions and transportation fares are a vital part of average Filipinos' typical payment behavior daily. The BSP said, and I quote, "Until a market vendor and a tricycle driver can accept digital payments, transitioning to cashless transactions would be difficult for an average Filipino consumer," unquote. And as we speak, we are making it possible for this segment to be included into the digital fold, and thanks to the power and potential of QR. To transform the future, we must first deepen our relationships with the people we serve. Without empathy, technology, as advanced as it is, loses its meaning and impact. Again, for everyone here, let's leverage on these technologies to transform toward shared prosperity. Thank you, and mabuhay.
Thank you so much, Lito. I like the way that you said that no one left behind. Let's move to Singapore. So I would like to introduce you all to Eugene Ho, Co-Head Cybersecurity and Data Protection Practice, and Glad Hill LLP, representing Singapore FinTech Association.
Hi everyone. Hi. Good afternoon. Hi from Singapore. So I'm here to talk a bit about the Singapore equivalent of the QR systems and how it has taken root in Singapore. Sorry, let me. So domestically, now we have the SGQR. This is the world's first unified QR code system. It was launched in 2018. It's a government-led initiative by the MES and the IMDA. The intent actually is to provide an alternative to the more expensive and cumbersome ePOS hardware, and also to combine multiple QR codes into one single QR label. So going forward, the intent is for QR codes to be made easily available, and consumers like us could easily scan and make payments. So on the left, I mean, you'll find an example of a QR code that is available on various mom and pop shops around Singapore. Specifically, this is actually taken during lunch. It's a store at La Pasa. If you have been in Singapore, that's a great place to be. Pretty good actually. The spinach soup is great. But the store that and like many stalls in Singapore, is made itself available to QR code payments. You scan the code, you make payments from the various operators below. Simple, straightforward, and cashless. Very significant penetration in Singapore. As of September 2023, there are 31 FIs participating and approximately 230,000 merchants that are participating in this initiative. So going forward, during this month of November, coincidentally, we are doing a POC test of the SGQR Plus in conjunction with the FinTech Festival. This is intended to be a more improved and upgraded version of SGQR. Intent actually is to allow merchants to accept multiple payments by registering with a single acquirer. So previously, under the QR system, you need to register with each of the various payment providers. But moving forward, the plan is to make sure that domestically we are able to have a more seamless type onboarding where you register as a single acquirer, and then you are able to make customers are able to make payments even though they are on different payment platforms. Internationally, we have various bilateral cooperations, cross-border type payments in the works. To date, Singapore and Malaysia, we have SGQR code linkage. Indonesia as well, we have something in place recently as November. Yeah. So then all this is the end, and I've kept to my 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Injin. Hey, let's go to Vietnam. So I would like to introduce you all to Vu Thi Nguyen Hong, Head of Secretary of Vietnam FinTech Club and Head of Business Development Department of National Payment Corporation at Vietnam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hương. I'm from the Vietnam FinTech Club, and I'm also from NAPAS, the National Payment Gateway of Vietnam. And today I would like to share about the QR landscape in Vietnam and the QR cross-border. And before going to detail about the QR, I would like to share something about the overview of Vietnam. We have more than 98 million citizens, with the high percentage of total population using internet. And we have now more than 74.6 million bank accounts. And about the QR development in Vietnam, actually we have the QR payment since 2017. And at this moment, QR Pay become popular and have to implement it by some payment intermediaries like VNPay, Momo, Mocha, and Zalo Pay. But at that moment, the QR seemed slow developed because this is a closed loop. It means that the PSP carry the QR and they also acquire the merchant and serving within their loop. In 2018, State Bank of Vietnam issued standards for QR code payment. And later on in 2019, NAPAS, the National Payment Gateway in Vietnam, the National Payment Corporation in Vietnam launched QR payment service. However, because at this moment we have not many banks join this platform, so the QR did not popular at that moment. In 2091, NAPAS launched Việt QR Fund Transfer, and at the beginning time, NAPAS have 14 issuing bank join this system. And the Việt QR, under the sponsorship of the State Bank of Vietnam, since from 2019 to now, every bank are using Việt QR, and the market recognize that all payment intermediary have gradually switched to use Việt QR. And this slide I want to share you about the popular of Việt QR now in Vietnam. Since September 2019, we reached out nearly 900 million transaction per month, and NAPAS plan to reach more than 1 billion per month at the end of this year. You can see the Việt QR everywhere, shopping mall, and also 5-star hotel, and also some coffee shop or clothes shop in the street. Concerning to the cross-border QR payment, under the sponsorship of State Bank of Vietnam, NAPAS is the QR scheme now connect with ITMX from Thailand, with An Kleda and Bakong from Cambodia. And this December, we will sign the MOU with LabNet, the QR scheme of Laos. And under discussion, we discussed with QR at India, Korea, and NEST of Singapore. Vietnam's central bank introduced on last month to be a part of new Asian plan focused on making cross-border payment easier. And at this agreement, we will collaborate with Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, and Singapore. Yeah. And within the cross-border QR payment scheme, we are now focused on the facilitate the QR payment. And our plan is convert the QR fund transfer to QR payment, and expand the service acceptance network to more bank and merchant. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was so impressed with that hockey stick growth just in less than a year. More to watch. Okay, let's move to Thailand. I would like to introduce you all to Shonadette Kimara Thana.
Hi. Hi. Okay.
Yeah, so Shana is the president of Thai FinTech Association.
Let me share the screen first. Can you guys see it now?
Yep.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Sholadet from Thai FinTech Association. So talking about QR payment or QR code in Thailand, we we are grateful that we are quite advanced in this field because we have the standardized QR that anybody can use from any mobile applications, from any instruments, paying to all the merchants or paying to the friends, and it's the open infrastructure. We have had this QR payment for several years, and thanks to the commercial banks in Thailand, they charge nothing from retail to use this. So you can imagine that you can send the money to your friend, paying at the supermarket, paying at the flower shop and anything. As well as the cross-border, we have had good deals with other countries, especially in ASEAN, based on the bilateral agreement. Okay, and on your right-hand side, this is the example of Thai QR payment, which is the QR code. You can use it on the static approach that you can print it out and put it there in your shop, or we can generate the dynamic QR code. We can generate automatically from the POS. For example, if you buy a cup of coffee and then it would cost you like 60 baht. So this QR code would contain that 60 baht amount. You can scan and then pay that 60 baht right away without manually key in that 60 baht digit. And if you ask about the numbers, so in Thailand, we are a country of roughly 70 million population. So right now we have the registration of the prompt pay, which is like a backbone of the system that we can use the mobile phone number to register, or can use the ID card to register. So right now the registration is over 76 million already. For the usage, let's say how many times per year that the typical Thai would use e-payment. So right now the figure is 508 times per person per year, and we foresee a lot of increases going forwards. If you divide this e-payment into internet and mobile banking and then e-money, okay? The first one, obviously from the commercial bank, right now we have about 133 million accounts already. On average, one people will have 2 accounts, and the size, the value of each transaction is about 4,000 baht, okay? For e-money, the registered account are pretty much the same as the internet mobile banking, but you can see from the average of the payment amount is significantly lower than the mobile banking, because for this e-wallet, the use case might be to buy some goods at the convenience store. In Thailand, we have had about 12,000 outlets of 7-Eleven, and TrueMoney Wallet is in the same group as 7-Eleven. So that's why we can use TrueMoney Wallet to pay at the 7-Eleven. And for TrueMoney Wallet, this is the largest e-money player in Thailand, having more than 30 million registered accounts, and half of them, roughly 15 or 16 million accounts for the monthly active users. Okay, you can find out more about this data from the Bank of Thailand. Not only for QR, but the Bank of Thailand is quite advanced in developing the CBDC. So for wholesale CBDC, we have had Bridge initiative alongside Hong Kong, China, and UAE. Okay, for retail CBDC, we completed pilot to learn with 2 commercial banks and 1 non-bank. Okay, it's the lady. Talking about the cross-border QR payment, we have had this collaboration with obviously Singapore, Indo, Malay, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Japan. So if you want to know more information about the QR payment, please visit the website of the Bank of Thailand. There are plenty of information, and they are in English as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we have done all the FinTech Association around all the countries, and we would like to hear our next speaker, which is Anthony Morris. He is the EPAA ambassador.
Wonderful sharings, and many thanks to EPAA and then everybody from all the FinTech associations. What an astonishing achievement both locally in each market, and then obviously the markets are all connecting up. There's a couple of themes, and then moving into where we go next. So there's themes coming out where we have closed loops first, and then there's an issue to open loop. And this has played out in many markets since the early schemes, if we take credit cards in the US or debit. So yeah, closed loops first, and there's nothing wrong with closed loops, and we still have closed loops existing that interoperate. Then we have open loops where we're getting more interoperability. One of the things, and I think it was Nick mentioned, where we can solve the interoperability and harmonization problem with technology, we should do that. So as Nick mentioned, there used to be lots of terminals, and then gradually you see them condense into one. The wonderful thing about QR, which quite rightly is a Japanese invention, and then it really took the mainland to pick it up and then use it to pretty much eliminate cash over there. The really thing about a QR, and actually a couple of markets mentioned this, the cost of bringing a merchant in to the network, especially a micro merchant or an SME, is approaching next to zero. If they've already got a smartphone, maybe, or a simple phone, or if they can even if they just print out a static QR, that is a wonderful piece of inclusion. And I think one of the great themes here, as this has opened up, is the transformative nature of the inclusiveness into digital payment markets that allows vast elements of the population, particularly those in the micro and SME area, which is the backbone of most economies, to benefit from this. I think we also heard in a couple of markets, and I'm sure more, like in Malaysia, where the fees have been waived, so there's no cost for the merchant. We also heard a reference to the fees being waived elsewhere on the consumer side, which hopefully is the case. So what we've got is this set of initiatives from initially closed loop success to open loop success in markets, and then a standardization with the support of the regulators, and then beginning to get interoperability. Now, interoperability can be solved by the underlying technology, provided people concentrate on the details of that. So one of the areas next is a closed loop interoperability is fine. So Alipay Plus is going to work in every market, so don't worry about that. However, where the different markets are relying on EMV as the underlying standard for the message, there is a need at the detail. I'm sure that all of you that have implemented this have found it. There's usually a need to make sure that the syntax and any localizations in the syntax or the messages themselves are preferably not mandatory if you want to get a lowest cost of integration. If they are there, then obviously they just need to be handled by the technology. But the simpler and more harmonized we can make it, the more everybody benefits. So one of the great things about this session today is obviously wonderful sharing across the region. The more, and what I've always found in payments, I've been in payments for many years now, payments is a lovely co-opetition area. Sure, everybody competes, but they tend to compete away from the infrastructure. They compete on the sort of marketing and the offers, and maybe the recruitment of users, consumers, and merchants. But actually, payments people instinctively cooperate on this level, and I think anything like this forum, anything that encourages open sharing of getting down into the technical details, how to implement this, the lower we can make the implementation cost, the more we'll build that two-sided network out, which is already happening in countries, beginning to happen in bilaterals. But the more we can bring that together and make those integrations open, and they just work, that will increase the benefit for all. And coming back to the inclusion theme, a lot of the micro and SMEs are going to be very dependent on tourists. And previously, that was quite a big burden. The burden of a proper point of sale terminal and accepting a credit card is a very big burden. Too big for the small micro SMEs selling in stalls to tourists or food to tourists. So QR code has been a revolutionary way of including them. And I think the more we can ensure that harmonization and interoperability, it actually will cover the travelers and the tourist side as well, which can be critical to their livelihoods. So probably in summary, wonderful sort of in-market transformation of an inclusion of retail payments, whether those are card-based or whether those are faster payment-based through a common QR. Massive inclusion of economic activity there, obviously India being a particular call out that we heard about today. And then we're seeing the movement bilaterally. And I think anything like this type of forum where there's sharing connections that can make the harmonization and lower the cost of the interconnectivity. Probably one thing for next is it'll be interesting if any either commercial parties or non-commercial parties have really got into the certification, because generally the suppliers, whether that's of a payment app that can work anywhere in the region, the more this is certified, the easier it is, because then you can rely on it. And probably the last thing, which may be really interesting to see from the people, the experts on the call, if something goes wrong, how well is it handled? Because payments are great when they work, payments not so great if they don't work. So the next thing that tends to emerge in schemes as they form is that, okay, what do we do if something goes wrong? And obviously the schemes that have had 50, 60 years to perfect this, it's very clear what happens if something goes wrong with a credit card transaction. For effectively emerging collaborations like this one, I think that will be something it'll be interesting to see how people are tackling that. And again, that's somewhere where in my experience, the operations people are very happy to collaborate on that. Likewise on the sort of any security elements as well. People are always very happy to collaborate. So wonderful session. I'll hand it back to our co-hosts, May and Camilla, who've just got back together. And yeah, thank you all.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I got so much notes to it, and I have to agree with you. Payment people, we do cooperate and collaborate, and to make bring more financial inclusion and closing the gap of the inequality. I think, yeah. So,
yeah, it feels like we've been drinking from the fire hose tonight. I have so many things pondering. Even the battery of May's laptop ran out because of all the activities going on. But May, I have one question to you. And thank you, Anthony, for that wrap, actually. A wrap that still bounced so many questions out of where do we start now. So May, with those presentations through today, what stood out to you? What feeling did you like, I need to do, this is something we need to pick up?
Yeah, quite a few things. I think first is that that's a standard. As Anthony mentioned about a lot of standards built on the EVM.
Yep.
And innovation. I think there's some similarity when it comes to, for example, ISO 20022.
Yep.
So that's a standard, that's an XML. But when it comes to interoperability, it's that how do you lower to the level of that? Same thing about a syntax. How do you innovate? So yes, that's a standard, but for the true interoperability from the innovation and technology science perspective, that still need to have a common language.
Yep.
Down to the actual development level. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that the cross-border. So there's a lot of bilateral conversation, different MOU, different agreements for the cross-border. And it's great to see that payments can change the world when the ecosystem are not coming to play together.
Mm.
So I think it's a great thing to see that a lot of different jurisdictions to have that collaboration.
Yep. I find it's interesting to see like all those hockey sticks moments that has happened in the market. But then it's still this big conversation on cross-border payments. It's just a part of cross-border payment. So that's something that I'm thinking, like if you're sitting and you're regulator, how do you prioritize to the different initiatives that's going around different cross-border payments, because this is solving one type of cross-border payments. But also I find interesting with the two different developments with closed loop and open loop. What do you think around that it might be different incentives for the closed loop to
so personal opinion, I think payment need to be open. Payment definitely need to be open. So that's to generate more opportunity for the new entrant coming to the market. And the hope is that the new entrant coming to the market have more competition, and the competition will bring better innovation and also lower the cost of payment. So I think that having that interoperability can make payments more open. I think the closed loop will be, of course, that without saying that there's a strong player in the market of that, and there's all the intention to make payment closed, hence the closed loop. But I think that's an innovation perspective, especially that in Asia Pacific region is one region, but we have 60 countries. And if you look at the population, it's different, and there's a lot of islands in this region as well. What that meant is that it's actually geographically quite dispersed. So I think that making payment close may not be a necessarily good idea for the future innovation.
No, it's a bit dangerous with that, what we spoke and what Sanjeev started with the different corridors that we might be leaving some people around in the interoperable story if we're just sticking to the corridors.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So please pop in what stood out to you on this call today, and we'll take that into account when we plan future sessions. I was going to ask one also that was surprising to me, and that I've been sitting and pondering, is this how in India they have two different QR standards depending on who's issuing the codes. To my hearing, that was not the case anywhere else.
Yeah, no, that's actually what I pick up as well. But then the actual adoption that it worked well, and also I heard the other one is that the QR code is actually beyond payment, and it's different type as well. So the different type have different standard of the QR. I think that's actually not a bad idea to have that, because then is how do you it's not just about payment. It's that what is the upstream and downstream impact of the payments.
Yep.
So it's making it easier, harnessing those data and the insight especially for the small merchants.
Yeah. And it's almost tying it together. I don't know if I should look there or there. You can see I'm not the TV presenter. But as what Anthony touched on now, the different codes and certification, that's touching a little bit going in that India space of who's issuing the QR codes. Because what we do know, and what Anthony alluded to a bit, is what happens when things goes wrong and around fraud. So I think that's something that we probably need to look into in future forums. Also, we're going to have the APAC Payments Fraud Forum next year, also in a collaboration with FinTech Association across the region. So many things to pick up on. If you would leave the audience with 3 things you think they should think about, we might have to leave with one thing because we have a few minutes. One thing you think that the audience should take away from this call and speak to their payments peers in market about?
Payment is about ecosystem. So I think having this type of forum is great. And yes, I think I'll probably borrow Anthony's quote, the collaboration and cooperation of all the innovators need to come together and to find the balance and what is the common thing that we can actually build on each other to create benefit for everyone. And then that's back to the EPAA mission of having a platform or the voice for us all to impact further.
Yep, no, absolutely. Thank you for that. And I'm going a little bit in line with that it is, I think where we are now, it's just forums like this to make sure what's going on, but then also what does it take to play? Because if we don't know that, and if we don't know how to connect this, as Anthony, you're getting a lot of kudos here, we're alluding back to you. But if we don't know that, then we can't. It is a network place, so we need to hook into each other. So to the whole audience, first, like an applaud, there is that little emoji to all the presenters and to May and to everybody who's helped us to create this session. This, out of all the events we do, this is the one that is most moving part. So thank you, audience. Thank everyone. And of course, we're going to share the recording We're going to do a report on it. And all what we're saying here is feeding into our advocacy and policy agenda. This is not a standalone event, so please stay connected. And if you have any ideas how to improve this or what you're taking away from that, let us know. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, everyone.